The day she left me, she thought she had won. She walked out the door with her head high, her hand wrapped around his arm as if she had stepped into a brighter, richer life. What she didn't know was the truth. The very man she chose over me worked for me. At first, I couldn't breathe. It was as if someone had pressed the air out of my chest. To be abandoned is one thing. To be replaced is another. But to be replaced with him, the man who had always lingered in the background, the one who pretended to be a friend while quietly circling like a vulture, that cut deeper than I thought I could survive. I replayed her words in my mind, every sharp edge of them carving into me. She said I wasn't ambitious enough, that he could give her more, that I was holding her back. And then she was gone. Just like that, years of promises dissolved into a single night, a single choice. But betrayal is a strange thing. It burns, it hollows you out, it makes you question your worth, until something inside you hardens. And as I sat in the silence she left behind, I realized something. This wasn't the end. Not for me. Not for the truth. Before I take you further into what happened, let me pause for a second. If you've ever been through betrayal, if you've ever been left, abandoned, or replaced, then you'll understand this story. And if you're still here with me, I want you to stay until the end, because what came next is not just about heartbreak, it's about power, patience, and the kind of revenge that doesn't need shouting to be heard. So make sure you're subscribed, because I promise you don't want to miss stories like this. And tell me in the comments if you've ever had someone underestimate you, someone who thought you were weaker than you really are. Because maybe, like me, you'll find that underestimation is the sharpest weapon of all. When she walked away, she thought she had closed the book on me. But really, she had just started the first chapter of a story she never saw coming.
Before everything fell apart, there was a time when I thought we were unshakable. I remember the nights when we had nothing but each other, when we stayed up late dreaming about the life we'd build. She would lean against me, tracing shapes on my hand, and tell me we didn't need the world as long as we had love. I believed her. I believed every word. Because when you love someone that deeply, you don't measure what they bring to the table. You only see the light in their eyes and think it's enough to keep you both warm. Back then, I didn't see the cracks. I didn't notice the way her eyes lingered on things we didn't have. The expensive clothes and store windows, the cars that flashed past us on the street, the couples in restaurants ordering bottles of wine without looking at the price. At first, I thought it was harmless. Everyone dreams of a little more. But slowly her dreams stopped sounding like ours and started sounding like hers. And then there was him. He was always around, smiling just enough to seem harmless. He wasn't my friend, but he wasn't my enemy either. He lived in that gray area where you don't trust someone, but you don't call them out because they haven't crossed the line yet. He laughed at my jokes, shook my hand firmly, and looked at her just a little too long when he thought I wouldn't notice. She told me I was overthinking it, that he was just polite, just helpful, just ambitious. And I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that love was stronger than temptation, that loyalty was stronger than convenience. But loyalty doesn't vanish in a moment. It fades, little by little, like a flame that dies not because of one gust of wind, but because someone keeps opening the window wider and wider. I started to feel it, the way you feel a storm before it breaks. A silence in her voice when she spoke to me. A hesitation when I reached for her hand. A smile that no longer belonged fully to me. Still, I held on. I told myself that every couple goes through rough seasons, that love is tested and only grows stronger afterward. I wanted to fight for us, even if she was already letting go. And then came the night everything changed. The night I realized that the storm wasn't approaching anymore. It was already here.
The night it all came crashing down started like any other. She was quieter than usual, moving around the house with that distracted look she'd worn more often lately. I asked if something was wrong. She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached her eyes. It was the kind of smile you give when you've already decided on something but don't want to say it out loud just yet. Dinner was cold before we even sat down. We barely touched our plates. I tried to make small talk, tried to remind her of the us we used to be, but every word felt like it was bouncing off a wall I couldn't see. She finally set her fork down and sighed in that way people do when they're rehearsing bad news. And then she said it. "I can't do this anymore." Just like that. No warning, no build-up. She said it like it had been sitting on her tongue for months, waiting for the right moment to fall out. I asked her what she meant, even though part of me already knew. She avoided my eyes. She talked about ambition, about how she needed more, about how she couldn't spend her life with someone who wasn't reaching for the top. And then she said the part that broke me. There's someone else. The room went silent. My ears rang, my chest tightened, and the world felt like it had tilted off its axis. I asked her who, even though my stomach already knew the answer. And when she said his name, it was like a knife sliding between my ribs. Him. The man who had lingered on the edges, the one I never trusted, the one who smiled just a little too much at her. She didn't even flinch when she admitted it. She said he could give her the life she deserved, that he had ambition, drive, connections, that with him she wouldn't have to wait for dreams to come true. They would already be hers. And then, as if she hadn't already shattered me, she twisted the blade deeper. She said I was too simple, too content, too small for the life she wanted. That was the last thing she said before she walked out the door. No tearful goodbye, no hesitation. She left with him waiting outside in his polished car, the glow of street lights reflecting on the windshield like a cruel spotlight. I didn't chase her. My body wouldn't let me move. I just stood there, staring at the door she'd closed behind her, wondering how years of love could disappear in a single night. The pain that followed wasn't loud. It was quiet, suffocating, the kind that presses down on you when the house is too still and every corner whispers her absence. I thought I had lost everything. I thought the world had decided I wasn't enough. But I was wrong, because the truth was still waiting, and the truth would change everything.
In the days that followed, the silence was unbearable. I'd wake up reaching for her side of the bed, only to find it cold. The house felt bigger than it ever had, not because it had changed, but because the person who filled it with warmth was gone. At first, I blamed myself. I went over every word, every moment, every choice I'd made, wondering what I could have done differently. Was I really too simple? Too content? Was love not enough anymore? But with every passing day, the sharp ache of loss began to settle into something else. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter. A clarity I hadn't felt before. She hadn't left because I was weak. She had left because she didn't see my strength. She couldn't. She was too blinded by the shine of things that never last. And that's when I remembered what she didn't know, what he didn't know, what no one knew. Because while they measured success in cars and restaurants and weekend trips, I had been building something else entirely. Quietly, patiently. Without flashing it in anyone's face, I had invested. Not loudly, not carelessly, but with intent. Small shares here, a stake there, little moves that most people would laugh at because they didn't look glamorous enough. But I understood something they didn't. Real wealth doesn't shout. Real wealth whispers, and it grows in silence. And among those quiet investments was the very company he worked for. At first, it was just a smart financial move. But now it was leverage. The irony was almost poetic. The man she left me for, the one she praised as ambitious and powerful, was standing on ground I partially owned. He didn't even know it. Neither did she. So I didn't lash out. I didn't call her. I didn't demand answers. Instead, I began to move in shadows. I reviewed contracts. I studied shareholder agreements. I reached out to old contacts, lawyers, accountants, people who lived in the details. I didn't ask for favors. I asked for facts. And the more I dug, the clearer it became. I wasn't powerless. In fact, I was holding more cards.
When I stepped out of that building, the air felt different, lighter. For the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight pressing down on my chest. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something quieter, steadier, a kind of peace I hadn't known I was searching for. But peace, I would learn, rarely stays uninterrupted. The messages started that evening. First just one, then another, then calls. Her number lighting up my phone over and over again. I ignored them at first. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, not yet. But she didn't stop, and eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Her voice cracked the moment I said hello. She sounded nothing like the woman who had walked out of my life so confidently. She spoke quickly, tumbling over her words, begging for a chance to explain. She said she didn't know. She said she never imagined. She said maybe she'd made a mistake. For a moment, a part of me wanted to believe her, the part that still remembered the way she used to laugh, the way she once looked at me when the world felt simple. But then I remembered the night she left, the way she said I wasn't enough, the way she walked into another man's car without a second glance back at me. So I let her speak. I let her pour out every excuse, every regret, every plea. And when she finally went silent, waiting for me to say I'd take her back, I didn't. Instead, I said the one thing I had carried inside me since the day she walked away. You didn't choose him over me. You chose what you thought he had over what I really am. And then I ended the call. She tried again after that, of course. More calls, more messages. But I didn't answer. Not out of spite, out of choice. Because for the first time in a long time, I understood that I wasn't the broken one in this story. I hadn't lost her. She had lost me. And that made all the difference. Time has a way of softening the edges of even the sharpest pain. Months passed, and the storm that once consumed me began to fade into something quieter, memory. The hurt didn't vanish, no. It changed shape. It became a teacher.
Looking back, I realized the betrayal wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of something else, something stronger. Because if she hadn't walked away, I might never have discovered just how much I had built in silence. I might never have realized the value of patience, of resilience, of choosing substance over show. And as for him, his fall wasn't mine to orchestrate. Life did that on its own. A man who builds his pride on borrowed power will always find himself exposed in the end. But the lesson that stayed with me most wasn't about him. It wasn't even about her. It was about me. About how sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet. It's living well, with dignity, with purpose, without needing to prove yourself to those who doubted you. Because the truth is, the world doesn't always reward the loudest. More often, it rewards the steady, the ones who build when no one is watching, the ones who don't need applause to keep going. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this: never measure your worth through the eyes of those who cannot see it. And never let betrayal convince you that you are less than you are. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift, because when the truth finally comes to light, it speaks louder than any revenge ever could. And with that truth, I walked forward, not bitter, not broken, but free. The day it all came together didn't arrive with fireworks. It came quietly, just like the plan itself. A shareholder meeting, routine for most, a calendar entry easily ignored by anyone who thought they were untouchable. But for me, it was the stage I had been waiting for. I walked into the building dressed simply. No need to overplay my hand. The real power wasn't in appearances. It was in the paper, the contracts, the shares, the quiet signatures that no one paid attention to until it was too late. He was there, of course, standing tall, shaking hands like he owned the place. That smug grin plastered across his face, the one she must have fallen for. I watched him from across the room, the same man she left me for, completely unaware that the ground beneath his feet belonged partly to me. And then I saw her. She had come too, clinging to his arm, eyes glowing with the pride of someone who thought she had chosen wisely. For a moment I felt that old ache in my chest, but then it passed, replaced by something steadier. I wasn't here for anger. I was here for truth. The meeting began. Reports, numbers, charts, all the noise that fills these rooms before the real decisions are made. I stayed quiet, letting the rhythm lull them into comfort. And then the chairman called for the vote. That was my cue. I stood up, calm, steady. Every eye in the room turned to me, some with confusion, some with impatience. I cleared my throat, and in that moment, the silence was heavy enough to feel. My name is already on the documents you've all seen, but perhaps it's time to remind everyone just how much of this company I actually own. The words dropped like stones into water. His head snapped around, eyes wide, the grin wiped clean off his face. She stared at me as if she had just seen a ghost. I laid out the facts, one by one. My shares, my position, my voting power. Every number was a blade cutting through the illusion they had built.
Gasps rippled through the room, whispers followed. And then the chairman confirmed it. My shares gave me control far beyond what anyone had realized. The color drained from his face. He stammered, tried to protest, tried to spin it into nothing, but the papers didn't lie. His job, his reputation, his future, all of it hung on the goodwill of the very man he had stolen from. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to see them fall apart in front of me. All I needed was this: the moment they realized everything they had believed, everything they had mocked me for, had been a lie of their own making. And as I gathered my things to leave, the only sound behind me was their silence.